A distant cousin passed away and left me a ranch and $80 million. After years of being treated like a slacker, I decided to test my family. I pretended I needed money for medicine. My son said, "That's your problem," but my 18-year-old grandson drove 800 miles with his last $200. What I did next changed everything. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I was stirring my morning coffee when the phone rang, 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. Nobody calls at that hour unless something's wrong. My hand shook a little as I reached for the receiver, already bracing myself for bad news. "Is this Stephen Hartwell?" The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is Stephen." I set down my coffee cup, noting how the liquid sloshed slightly. My nerves weren't what they used to be. "Mr. Hartwell, this is David Morrison from Morrison & Associates, attorneys at law in Austin, Texas. I'm calling regarding the estate of Percival Hartwell." Percy. I hadn't thought about Cousin Percy in years, maybe decades. He was one of those family members you hear about in Christmas cards and funeral announcements, always distant, always doing his own thing somewhere far away. "I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Percival Hartwell passed away 3 weeks ago," the lawyer continued. "However, I have some rather surprising news. You've been named as the sole beneficiary in his will." I almost dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "You inherit his entire estate, Mr. Hartwell. This includes a 2,000-acre ranch in Hill Country, Texas, and liquid assets totaling approximately $80 million. The world seemed to stop spinning. I grabbed the back of my kitchen chair to steady myself, certain I'd misheard. "Did you say $80 million? "Yes, sir, that's correct. $80 million plus the ranch property valued at approximately $12 million. There are some legal procedures we need to complete, but the estate is quite straightforward." I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. This had to be some kind of mistake. Percy barely knew me. We'd met maybe 3 times in our entire lives. Twice at family reunions when I was a kid, and once at my father's funeral 20 years ago. He'd seemed nice enough, a bit eccentric, but we'd hardly exchanged more than pleasantries. "Mr. Hartwell, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here. Are you certain you have the right Stephen Hartwell?" Mr. Morrison chuckled softly. "Son of Harold Hartwell. Born October 15th, 1961 in Denver, Colorado." That was me, all right. But why would Percy leave me anything? We hardly knew each other. From what I understand, Mr. Percival was quite fond of you, though he was never one to show it openly. He left a letter explaining his decision. Would you like me to read it? My mouth felt dry. "Please." I heard papers rustling, then Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. "Dear Stephen, if you're hearing this, then I've finally kicked the bucket and you're probably as confused as a cat in a doghouse. Truth is, I've been keeping tabs on you over the years. Nothing creepy, mind you. Just checking in through mutual relatives, seeing how life's been treating you." I felt tears prick my eyes. Percy had been watching over me. The lawyer continued reading. "I know you've had your share of troubles, lost your dear Margaret too young, struggled to make ends meet on that pension, and from what I hear, your own family hasn't exactly rolled out the red carpet for you lately. Well, I figure it's time someone in this family showed you the respect you deserve. You're a good man, Stephen. You were the only one who took the time to really talk to me at Harry's funeral, asked about my life, listened to my stories. That meant more to me than you know." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, remembering that day. Percy had seemed lonely at the funeral, standing apart from everyone else. I'd felt sorry for him and spent maybe 20 minutes listening to him talk about his ranch and his cattle. "The money and land are yours to do with as you please," Mr. Morrison continued reading. "But I have one request. Don't let the vultures circle too quickly. You'll know what I mean soon enough. Take some time to figure out who really cares about Stephen the man, not Stephen the beneficiary. Trust me on this one. Your cousin, Percy." The silence stretched between us after he finished reading. Finally, Mr. Morrison spoke. "It's quite a generous gift, Mr. Hartwell. When would you be able to come to Texas to handle the paperwork? I need some time to process this. Can I call you back?" "Of course. Here's my direct number." He rattled off the digits, and I scribbled them on the back of an electric bill with a shaking hand. After I hung up, I sat in my small kitchen for what felt like hours, staring at the phone. $80 million. The number seemed impossible, like something from a movie. I'd never even seen $1 million, let alone owned it. My monthly pension barely covered my rent and groceries. I shopped at discount stores, clipped coupons, turned off lights religiously to save on electricity. Last month I'd had to choose between fixing my car's rattling muffler or buying my blood pressure medication. I chose the medication and learned to live with the noise. Now I supposedly owned more money than some small countries. The rational part of my brain kept insisting this was a scam. Nobody just inherits $80 million out of nowhere. But Mr. Morrison had known details about my life that only family would know, and Percy's letter. It felt real, personal, like the eccentric old man I remembered. I looked around my tiny apartment, the faded furniture I'd owned for 20 years, the television with the cracked screen I couldn't afford to replace, the stack of unpaid bills on my counter. If this was real, everything could change. But Percy's warning echoed in my mind. Don't let the vultures circle too quickly. I thought about my son Melvin, who only called when he needed something. Last Christmas he'd made it clear that my presence at his family gathering was more obligation than invitation. "Dad, try not to embarrass us in front of Linda's parents," he'd said, as if I were some kind of shameful secret. Then there was my daughter Linda, who lived 2 hours away but might as well have been on another planet. She sent birthday cards, the generic kind from the drugstore, and called maybe 3 times a year to check if I was still alive. The only one who seemed to genuinely enjoy my company was my grandson Tyler, Melvin's boy. He was 18 now, just graduated high school working part-time at a grocery store while saving for community college. Tyler actually visited me, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. We'd watch old westerns together and he'd listen to my stories about his grandmother Margaret without that glazed-over look adults got. Percy was right. I needed to be careful about who I told. People's attitudes could change mighty quickly when money was involved. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Morrison's number. When he answered, I cleared my throat. "Mr. Morrison, it's Stephen Hartwell. I've been thinking about what you said and I'd like to keep this quiet for now. How confidential can you keep the inheritance?" "Completely confidential, sir. Attorney-client privilege applies from the moment you become our client." "Good. I need some time to figure things out." But even as I spoke, I could feel something shifting inside me. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt a spark of something I'd almost forgotten existed, hope. And with that hope came a dangerous thought. What if I tested them first? The idea came to me 3 days later while I was counting pills at my kitchen table. My blood pressure medication, my cholesterol pills, the arthritis tablets that barely took the edge off anymore. 27 pills a day just to keep this old body running. The prescription bottles lined up like little soldiers, each one representing another monthly expense that ate into my meager pension. I'd been thinking about Percy's warning constantly. Don't let the vultures circle too quickly. The more I thought about it, the more I realized he was right to be cautious. Money changes people, but more importantly, it reveals who people really are underneath. Melvin hadn't called in 6 weeks. Linda sent a text last month. "Just hope you're well, Dad." Nothing more. Meanwhile, Tyler had stopped by twice just this week, once to help me fix a leaky faucet and once just to chat. He'd brought groceries both times, claiming his mom had bought too much, but I knew better. That boy was taking care of me with his part-time grocery store paycheck. That's when the plan crystallized in my mind. A test, a simple, cruel, necessary test. I picked up my phone and dialed Melvin first. It rang 4 times before he answered, and I could hear the irritation in his voice. "Dad, what's wrong?" Not, "Hi, Dad," or "How are you?" Just the assumption that something must be wrong for me to call. "Son, I need to talk to you about something." I made my voice sound tired, maybe a little shaky. It wasn't hard. I felt tired most days anyway. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of a client presentation." Of course he was. Melvin worked in pharmaceutical sales, made decent money, drove a nice car. He lived in a suburb with manicured lawns and belonged to a country club I'd never been invited to visit. "It's about my health, Melvin. I saw Dr. Rodriguez yesterday and there's been some complications with my blood pressure." I heard him sigh, the kind of exaggerated exhale that said this conversation was already inconveniencing him. "What kind of complications?" "He wants to put me on a new medication, but insurance won't cover it. Says it's experimental, but it's the only thing that might help prevent a stroke." I paused, letting the weight of that word settle. "The prescription costs $5,000 a month." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Melvin spoke, and his tone had shifted from irritation to something colder. $5,000? Dad, that's ridiculous. Have you looked into generic alternatives? The doctor says there aren't any for this particular medication. Well, you'll have to figure something out. Maybe there's a payment plan or something. I can't just come up with $5,000 out of nowhere. I felt something crack in my chest. Not surprise exactly, I'd expected this. But hearing it so bluntly, so matter-of-factly, still hurt. "I'm not asking for the full amount, son. Maybe just help me get through the first month while I figure out other options." "Dad, you know money's tight right now. Kevin needs new hockey equipment and Sarah's piano lessons aren't cheap. Plus we're trying to save for a vacation this summer. I'm sorry, but I just can't help you financially right now." The vacation, they were saving for a vacation while their father couldn't afford medication to prevent a stroke. "I understand," I said quietly. "I'll figure something out." "Good. Look, I have to go. My client's waiting." Take care of yourself." He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there staring at the phone for a long moment before dialing Linda's number. She answered on the second ring. "Dad, this is unexpected." Her tone was neutral, cautious. I went through the same story: the new medication, the cost, the insurance denial. Linda listened without interrupting, which I took as a hopeful sign until she spoke. $5,000 a month? Dad, that sounds like a scam to me. Are you sure this doctor is legitimate? I've been seeing Dr. Rodriguez for 8 years, Linda. Even so, that price seems outrageous. Have you gotten a second opinion? Linda, I'm not asking you to pay the full amount. I just need help getting started on the medication. Dad, you know I'm between jobs right now. The divorce settlement barely covers my rent and Emma's college expenses. I literally don't have any extra money. Maybe you could ask Melvin. The divorce? Linda had been between jobs for 2 years now, ever since her messy divorce from Tom. But I knew she'd received a substantial settlement, enough to buy a condo in a nice part of town and lease a luxury SUV. I already talked to Melvin. He's not in a position to help either. Well, I'm sorry, but neither am I. Have you looked into Medicare supplements or prescription assistance programs? I'll look into it, I said, though I could hear the defeat in my own voice. Good. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You always do. She hung up quickly after that, eager to end the uncomfortable conversation. 2 children, 2 people I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally. 2 people who couldn't be bothered to help their father afford life-saving medication. But I had one more call to make. Tyler answered on the first ring, breathless. "Grandpa, hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling?" Just the sound of his voice made my throat tight. "I'm okay, son. How are you? Still working at the store?" "Yeah, picking up extra shifts when I can, trying to save money for school, you know. But enough about me, you sound tired. Everything all right?" I hesitated. This was the hardest call to make because Tyler was the one person I didn't want to deceive. But I needed to know. I needed to be absolutely certain. "Tyler, I need to tell you something, and I need you to keep it between us for now." "Of course, Grandpa. What's going on?" I told him the same story, though it felt like poison coming out of my mouth. The medication, the cost, the insurance denial. I hated lying to this boy who'd never been anything but honest with me. $5,000, Tyler repeated slowly. "Grandpa, that's a lot of money." "I know it is, son. I've already talked to your father and Aunt Linda, but they can't help right now." The silence that followed was different from the others. I could almost hear Tyler thinking, calculating. "Grandpa, I don't have $5,000. I wish I did, but I only have about $800 saved up from work." My heart sank. Of course he didn't have that kind of money. He was 18, working part-time at minimum wage, saving every penny for college. "But you know what?" Tyler continued, and something in his voice had changed. "I'll figure it out. Even if I have to work double shifts every day, even if I have to postpone college for a semester, we'll get you that medication." The words hit me like a physical blow. This boy, this young man with everything ahead of him, was willing to sacrifice his future for me. "Tyler, no, I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, Grandpa. I'm telling you, family takes care of family, right? That's what you always taught me. Family takes care of family." Words I'd said to him countless times over the years, usually while I was taking care of everyone else. "How much do you need to get started on the first month?" Tyler asked. "The doctor wants at least $2,000 up front." "Okay. I've got the $800 in savings and I can probably borrow some from friends. But Grandpa, I'm going to drive down and see you this weekend. We'll figure this out together." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and cried. Real tears, the kind I hadn't shed since Margaret's funeral. Tyler was willing to give up everything for me, his savings, his college plans, his future. Meanwhile, my own children couldn't be bothered to skip one vacation or delay one luxury purchase. The test had worked better than I'd hoped, and worse than I'd feared. I now knew exactly who my real family was, but Tyler didn't know he'd just earned himself $80 million. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept all week, guilt gnawing at me like a persistent toothache. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's earnest face, heard his voice promising to sacrifice everything for me. The boy who'd never lied to me in his life. And here I was, deceiving him with the cruelest kind of test. I was nursing my 3rd cup of coffee when I heard the familiar rumble of Tyler's old pickup truck outside. Through my window, I watched him climb out, stretching his back after what must have been an 8-hour drive from Kansas City, 800 miles. He'd driven 800 miles on his weekend off, probably using gas money he couldn't spare. The knock on my door was gentle, considerate even at 9 in the morning. When I opened it, Tyler stood there with that crooked smile of his, holding a paper bag from McDonald's and looking tired but determined. "Morning, Grandpa. Brought you breakfast." He held up the bag. Hash browns, the way you like them. I stepped aside to let him in, my throat too tight to speak immediately. Tyler had always remembered little things like that, how I preferred my hash browns crispy, how I took my coffee black, how I liked to watch the Weather Channel during breakfast, even though it drove Margaret crazy when she was alive. Tyler, you didn't have to drive all this way. Course I did. He set the food on my small kitchen table and looked around the apartment with those sharp eyes of his. Besides, I wanted to see you. Make sure you're really okay. He'd lost weight since I'd seen him last month. Not much, but enough that I noticed. Working extra shifts at the grocery store, probably skipping meals to save money. All because his grandfather had lied about needing expensive medication. Sit down, let me get you some coffee. I busied myself with mugs, needing something to do with my hands. Thanks. Tyler sank into one of my kitchen chairs, and I noticed how carefully he moved. Long hours on his feet at work, then driving through the night to get here. So I've been thinking about your situation all week. My hand stilled on the coffee pot. Tyler, no, hear me out. He pulled a worn envelope from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. I've got $843 saved up. It's not much, but it's a start. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Inside that worn paper was probably every dollar this boy had managed to save from his minimum wage job. Money he'd been carefully setting aside for college, for his future, for a better life than the one his father was providing. I also talked to some friends from high school. Danny Morrison, you remember Danny, right? His dad owns that auto shop on 5th Street. Anyway, Danny says he can lend me $600 if I help him rebuild an engine on weekends. Tyler, I can't let you. And here's the thing, he continued, ignoring my protest. I called around to some of those pharmaceutical companies, you know, the ones that make these expensive drugs. Turns out they have assistance programs for people who can't afford their medications. My stomach clenched. Of course they did. Tyler had spent his week researching solutions while I'd been wallowing in guilt. I filled out some applications for you. They need proof of income and medical necessity, but Dr. Rodriguez can provide that, right? Tyler's eyes were bright with hope, proud of himself for finding potential solutions. I couldn't look at him directly. That's good thinking, son. The thing is, these programs can take weeks to approve, sometimes months, so we need to cover you in the meantime. Tyler tapped the envelope. This is enough for maybe half the first month's prescription, but I'm going to figure out the rest. How? The word came out sharper than I intended. Well, I was thinking I could pick up more shifts at work, maybe find a second job, and I could postpone starting college in the fall just for one semester. Give me time to save up more money and help you get established with these assistance programs. There it was. The sacrifice I'd been dreading to hear. Tyler was willing to delay his entire future for me. Tyler, no, absolutely not. You've worked too hard to get into college. It's just one semester, Grandpa. College will still be there in January. But we both knew that wasn't always true. How many young people postponed their education for just one semester and never made it back? How many got trapped in cycles of working to survive instead of working toward something better? Besides, Tyler continued, what's the point of me going to college if I lose my grandfather in the meantime? You're more important than any degree. The simple honesty in his voice nearly broke me. This was what love looked like, not the conditional affection I'd received from Melvin and Linda, not the obligatory holiday phone calls and forgotten birthdays. This was someone willing to sacrifice their dreams because they couldn't bear to lose you. Tyler, can I ask you something? Sure. Did you talk to your father about this? Tyler's expression darkened slightly. I tried. Called him Thursday night after we talked. And? He said you were probably exaggerating the situation. That old people sometimes panic about their health and make things sound worse than they are. Tyler's voice carried an edge of anger I'd rarely heard from him. I told him you'd never lie about something like that, and he laughed, Grandpa. He actually laughed and said I was too young to understand how complicated family finances can be. My hands clenched around my coffee mug. Melvin had dismissed not just me, but his own son's concern for his grandfather. What about your Aunt Linda? She's between opportunities right now. Tyler made air quotes with his fingers, and I could hear the sarcasm. According to her, she barely has enough money to cover her own expenses. Tyler looked out my kitchen window, jaw tight with frustration. You know what the worst part is? Dad spent more money on golf lessons last month than what you need for medication. And Aunt Linda just bought a new car. I saw the pictures on her Facebook. The boy had connected the dots on his own. He'd seen through his father's excuses and his aunt's claims of poverty. He understood exactly who was willing to help and who was making excuses. Tyler, what if I told you that you didn't need to worry about this anymore? What do you mean? His eyes sharpened with attention. I almost told him then, almost ended the charade and revealed the truth about Percy's inheritance. But something held me back. Maybe it was Percy's warning about vultures, or maybe I needed to see this through to understand the full scope of my family's true nature. I mean, what if I found another way to handle the medication costs? Grandpa, we've been through this. The assistance programs take time and you need the medication now. But what if there was another option? Something you didn't know about? Tyler frowned, studying my face carefully. Are you hiding something from me? The question hung in the air between us. This boy knew me too well, had inherited some instinct for truth that his father had never possessed. I could see him processing my words, my tone, the way I'd been acting since he arrived. Grandpa, is there something you're not telling me? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Mr. Morrison's number from Austin. I'd been expecting his call. He'd said he needed to finalize some paperwork this week. I should get this, I said, reaching for the phone. Mr. Hartwell? Morrison's familiar voice came through clearly enough that Tyler could probably hear it. I have those documents ready for your signature. When would be convenient for you to come to Texas? I glanced at Tyler, who was watching me with growing curiosity. Could I call you back later today? Of course, but Mr. Hartwell, I do need to remind you that the estate taxes are mounting daily. The sooner we can finalize the transfer, the better. Estate taxes, transfer. Tyler's eyes widened slightly as he caught those words. I understand. I'll call you back within the hour. After I hung up, Tyler leaned forward in his chair. Grandpa, who was that? Just some legal business. What kind of legal business involves estate taxes? I'd forgotten how sharp this boy was, how he paid attention to details that others missed. It was one of the things I loved most about him, and now it was the thing that was going to force my hand. Tyler, there's something I need to tell you. Tyler set down his coffee mug with deliberate care, the way someone does when they're preparing for important news. His eyes never left my face, and I could see him cataloging every micro-expression, every hesitation. The boy had always been perceptive, but sitting across from me now, I realized he'd grown into someone who could read people with uncomfortable accuracy. Grandpa, you're scaring me a little. What's going on? I took a deep breath, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Once I said the words, there would be no taking them back, but the weight of the lie had become unbearable, especially watching Tyler sacrifice everything for a medical crisis that didn't exist. Tyler, I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise me you'll keep it between us for now. Okay. His voice was cautious but steady. I promise. First, I need to confess something. I met his eyes directly, needing him to see the truth in mine. I don't need expensive medication. I lied about being sick. Tyler blinked, confusion clouding his features. What? My blood pressure is fine. Dr. Rodriguez never prescribed any experimental medication. I made that up. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like hurt. You lied to me? His voice was quiet, but I could hear the pain underneath. Grandpa, you've never lied to me before. The accusation hit harder than any anger could have. Tyler was right. In 18 years, I'd never once lied to him. I'd made it a point of pride, actually, being the one adult in his life who always told him the truth. I did lie, and I'm sorry, but I had a reason. What reason could possibly justify lying about being sick? Tyler's voice was getting stronger, more upset. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? How much I've been working, trying to figure out how to help you? I deserved every bit of his anger. Tyler, 3 weeks ago, I inherited money from my cousin Percy. A lot of money. Tyler's eyebrows shot up. Money? What kind of money? I hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. Enough money that I don't need to worry about medical bills anymore. How much is enough money? More than I ever dreamed of having. Tyler leaned back in his chair, processing this information. So why lie about being sick? Why put me through all that worry? This was the hard part. The part that would either make Tyler understand or make him hate me forever. Because I needed to know who really cared about me. Not Stephen the rich man, but Stephen the father and grandfather. Understanding dawned slowly across Tyler's face. You tested us. Yes. You tested Dad and Aunt Linda too. Yes. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up again, his expression was unreadable. What did they say when you asked for help? I told him. Everything. Melvin's immediate dismissal, his concern about vacation savings and hockey equipment, Linda's suggestion that it might be a scam, her excuses about being between jobs while living in luxury. Tyler's face grew darker with each detail. By the time I finished, his jaw was clenched tight. Dad said you were probably exaggerating, he said quietly. He told me old people panic about their health. I know, you told me. And Aunt Linda suggested you were being scammed. Yes. Tyler stood up abruptly and walked to my kitchen window, staring out at the parking lot. So while they were making excuses, I was planning to give up college. The guilt in my chest felt like a physical weight. Tyler, I never wanted it to go that far. I thought maybe you'd offer some small amount or help me research options. I never imagined you'd be willing to sacrifice your future. He turned back to me, and I was surprised to see that he wasn't angry anymore. Instead, his expression was thoughtful, calculating. How much money did you inherit, Grandpa? Does it matter? It matters to me. I studied his face, trying to gauge his motivations. Why? Because I want to understand the full picture. If this inheritance is significant enough to change your life, then your test means something different than if it's just enough to cover some medical bills. The boy was thinking like an adult, analyzing the situation from multiple angles. I found myself both proud and slightly intimidated by his reasoning. It's life-changing money, Tyler. Generational wealth. His eyes widened slightly. Are we talking millions? I nodded. More than 10 million? I nodded again. Tyler sat back down heavily. Jesus, Grandpa, that's incredible. It's also terrifying, I admitted. I've never had money before. I don't know how to handle it, how to protect it, or who to trust with it. Is that why you tested us? Partly, but mostly I just needed to know who loved me for me, who would be there if I had nothing. Tyler was quiet for several minutes, absorbing everything I'd told him. Finally, he spoke. So Dad and Aunt Linda failed your test. Spectacularly. And I passed. With flying colors. Tyler, you were willing to give up everything for me. Your savings, your college plans, your future. No one has ever been willing to sacrifice so much for me. Tyler looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What happens now? What do you mean? I mean, what happens with the family? Do you tell Dad and Aunt Linda about the inheritance? The question I'd been dreading. I don't know yet. But they're going to find out eventually, right? I mean, you can't hide this kind of money forever. He was right, of course. Eventually the truth would come out. The question was when and under what circumstances. Tyler, can I ask you to do something for me? Sure. Don't tell your father or Linda about any of this yet. I need more time to figure out how to handle the situation. Tyler nodded slowly. I can keep a secret, but Grandpa, you know they're going to be furious when they find out, right? Especially when they realize you tested them and they failed. I know. And they're going to blame you for their own choices. The boy understood human nature better than most adults I knew. Probably. Tyler leaned forward, his expression serious. Then you need to be prepared for that. You need to decide what kind of relationship you want with them going forward, because once they know about the money, everything changes. I looked at my grandson, really looked at him. Somewhere in the last few years, he'd grown from a sweet kid into a young man with wisdom beyond his years. He was thinking about consequences, about family dynamics, about protection. Tyler, there's something else I want to discuss with you. What? This inheritance. It's changed my perspective on a lot of things, including my will. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Grandpa, you don't need to talk about that stuff. Yes, I do, because you're the only one who cared enough to sacrifice for me when you thought I needed help. That means something. Understanding flickered in Tyler's eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when things get tough. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, then asked, how much trouble are Dad and Aunt Linda going to be in when they find out what they missed? I smiled for the first time all week. That depends on how patient I'm feeling when the time comes. The look Tyler gave me was equal parts admiration and concern. Grandpa, you've changed. He was right. The scared, lonely old man who'd answered the phone 3 weeks ago was gone. In his place was someone with power, with options, and with very clear ideas about loyalty and family. But Tyler didn't know the full extent of what he'd earned yet. He didn't know about the $80 million, or the ranch, or the fact that his willingness to sacrifice everything had just secured his entire future. That revelation would come soon enough. For now, I was content knowing that when the time came, Tyler would be ready for it, unlike his father. 2 weeks after Tyler's visit, I walked into Morrison's law office in Austin wearing a new suit. Not expensive by rich people's standards, but the nicest clothes I'd owned in 20 years. The inheritance was now official, $80 million in change plus a sprawling ranch that looked like something out of a movie. The ranch house itself was modest by Texas standards but comfortable. 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch, and a view that stretched for miles. Percy had lived simply despite his wealth, and I found myself respecting him more each day I spent in his former home. But the real change wasn't in my bank account or my address. It was in how I carried myself. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt like I mattered, like my opinions and decisions carried weight. I was discovering something interesting about having money. It wasn't just about what you could buy. It was about options, about not having to accept whatever scraps life threw your way. Tyler had been calling regularly, checking on me with genuine concern. He still didn't know the full extent of the inheritance. I'd been vague about numbers, letting him think it was comfortable but not life-changing money. But even that partial knowledge had changed something between us. He talked to me differently now, like an equal instead of a responsibility. The real test would come when I returned to Colorado. I'd been gone 3 weeks, supposedly handling some legal matters. Melvin had called once, a perfunctory check-in that lasted maybe 2 minutes. Linda had sent a text asking when I'd be back, but only because she needed me to sign some insurance paperwork she'd been handling. Neither had asked about my health. Neither had followed up on the supposed medical crisis that had started this whole thing. I was sitting on Percy's porch Thursday evening watching the sunset paint the hills gold when my phone rang. Melvin's name on the caller ID. "Dad, where the hell are you?" "Hello to you too, son. Mrs. Patterson from your apartment complex called me. She said she hasn't seen you in weeks and your mailbox is overflowing. Are you okay?" Mrs. Patterson, my nosy neighbor who probably went through my mail when I wasn't looking. Of course she'd called Melvin when she couldn't find anything to gossip about. "I'm fine, Melvin. I told you I was handling some legal business." "What legal business takes 3 weeks, and why haven't you been answering your phone?" I had been answering my phone, for Tyler, for Mr. Morrison, for the few people whose calls I actually wanted to take. But Melvin had only called once in 3 weeks, so his complaint seemed a bit rich. "I've been busy." "Busy with what?" "Dad, you're 73 years old and retired. How busy can you be?" The condescension in his voice was automatic, instinctive. In Melvin's mind, I was still the struggling pensioner who couldn't afford to fix his car, someone whose time wasn't valuable because he didn't have anything important to do. "Actually, Melvin, I've been busier than you might imagine." Something in my tone must have caught his attention because he paused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means my circumstances have changed recently." "Changed how?" I could have told him then, could have explained about Percy's inheritance and watched his attitude shift in real time, but I found myself curious about something else first. "Tell me, son, do you remember calling me a few weeks ago? About my health situation?" Another pause. "What health situation?" "The medication I needed, the $5,000 I couldn't afford." "Oh, that." His voice dismissed the memory like it was nothing. "Did you ever figure that out?" "Did I ever figure that out?" As if my potential stroke was just some minor inconvenience he'd forgotten about. "As a matter of fact, I did figure it out." "Good, see? I told you that you'd work something out." "No, he told me it was my problem and hung up, but I didn't correct him." "Melvin, I'm curious about something. Do you ever think about me when we're not talking?" "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. Do you ever wonder how I'm doing, whether I'm lonely or struggling or need anything?" The silence stretched uncomfortably long. "Dad, where's this coming from?" "Just answer the question." Of course I think about you. You're my father. When was the last time you called just to talk? Not because Mrs. Patterson called you, not because you needed something, just because you wanted to hear my voice." More silence. "I thought so," I said quietly. "Dad, I'm busy. I have a family to support, a career to manage. I can't call you every day just to chat." "I'm not asking for every day, Melvin. I'm asking for occasionally. I'm asking for you to care whether your father is alive or dead." "That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you visited me? Not for Christmas or my birthday, but just because you wanted to see me." "Dad, you live 8 hours away. Tyler drives 8 hours to see me regularly. Tyler's 18 and has nothing better to do." The casual dismissal of his son's loyalty made something cold settle in my chest. Tyler works 2 jobs and is saving for college. He has plenty of better things to do. He visits because he wants to, not because he has to. "Look, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this guilt trip isn't fair." Guilt trip. That's what caring about your relationship with your child was called, a guilt trip. "You're right, Melvin, it's not fair. None of this has been fair." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done pretending that our relationship is something it's not. I'm done accepting scraps of attention and calling it love." "Dad, what the hell has gotten into you?" Perspective. I stood up from Percy's porch chair, looking out over land that now belonged to me. "And options." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that everything in my life has changed in the past month and you haven't even noticed." "Changed how?" "That's the thing, Melvin. If you'd been paying attention, you'd already know." I could hear the frustration building in his voice. "Know what?" "Goodbye, son." I hung up before he could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail. It rang 3 more times over the next hour. Each call went unanswered. The next morning brought a series of increasingly frantic texts from Linda. Dad, Melvin says you're acting strange. Are you okay? Please call me back. We're worried about you. Dad, this isn't like you. What's going on? What wasn't like me was having choices. What wasn't like me was refusing to accept whatever minimal attention my children were willing to spare. I was reading the morning paper on Percy's porch when Tyler called. Grandpa, Dad called me last night. He's freaking out about some conversation you guys had. Is he now? He says you were talking crazy, saying everything in your life had changed. He's worried you might be having some kind of breakdown. I almost laughed. A breakdown. Because standing up for myself and refusing to accept scraps was clearly a sign of mental instability. Tyler, do I sound like I'm having a breakdown? No, you sound different. Stronger, maybe. More confident, out of the mouths of babes. That's because I am different. The question is whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's good, honestly. But Grandpa, Dad wants to know where you are. He's talking about filing some kind of welfare check or something. A welfare check. Melvin was so unused to me asserting any kind of independence that he thought I must be mentally incompetent. Tyler, tell your father that I'm perfectly fine. I'm in Texas, handling my inheritance, and I'll be back in Colorado when I'm ready. He knows about the inheritance. He knows something has changed. He just doesn't know what. Are you going to tell him? I looked out over the rolling hills that now belonged to me, at the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance, at the sunset that painted everything gold. Eventually, but not yet. Right now, I'm enjoying watching him squirm. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Grandpa, you really have changed. Is that a problem? No, I think I like this version of you better. After we hung up, I sat in Percy's favorite chair and thought about power, not the kind that comes from intimidating people or throwing weight around, the quiet kind that comes from knowing you have choices. For 63 years, I'd lived at the mercy of other people's schedules, other people's priorities, other people's definitions of my worth. I'd accepted whatever attention my family was willing to spare, grateful for any scraps of affection. But Percy's inheritance had given me something more valuable than money. It had given me the ability to say no, the power to walk away, the option to demand better. And for the first time in my life, my children were going to have to earn my attention instead of taking it for granted. They just didn't know it yet. I returned to Colorado 6 weeks later, driving a new truck with Texas plates and pulling a small trailer with some of Percy's furniture. Nothing too flashy, a Ford F-150, practical but nice. The kind of truck that said I had money but wasn't trying to show off. The apartment complex parking lot felt smaller somehow when I pulled in. Mrs. Patterson was outside watering her plants, and I saw her eyes widen when she spotted my new vehicle. She started walking over before I'd even turned off the engine. Stephen, where on earth have you been? I called your son weeks ago when your mail started overflowing. I know you did, Margaret. Thank you for your concern. She blinked at my formal tone. I'd always called her Mrs. Patterson before, but something about her nosiness and her quick call to Melvin had shifted my opinion of her. That's quite a nice truck, she said, running her eyes over it assessingly. Did you rent it? No, I bought it. Her eyebrows shot up. My goodness. That must have cost a fortune. I could afford it. The simple statement seemed to confuse her. In her mind, I was the poor retiree who complained about grocery prices and drove a beat-up sedan. The idea that I could afford a new truck didn't compute. Well, she said finally, your son has been calling here looking for you. Said you weren't answering your phone. I've been answering my phone for the people I wanted to talk to. Mrs. Patterson's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'd never spoken to her so directly before, never put her in her place so clearly. I should unpack, I said pleasantly. Have a good day, Margaret. I left her standing there and began unloading my trailer. Word travels fast in apartment complexes, and within an hour, I was sure everyone in the building knew that quiet Stephen Hartwell had come back with expensive new things and a completely different attitude. My phone rang as I was arranging Percy's old leather chair in my living room, Melvin's name on the display. Dad, thank God, where have you been? Texas. Texas? What were you doing in Texas? Inheriting a ranch. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. You inherited a what? A ranch, 2,000 acres in hill country, beautiful place. From who? My cousin Percy. Turns out he was quite wealthy. Another long pause. Dad, are you serious? Dead serious. How wealthy? I sat down in Percy's chair, enjoying the soft leather against my back. Wealthy enough that I don't have to worry about money anymore. What does that mean exactly? It means I bought a new truck without checking my bank balance first. It means I can afford to eat steak instead of ground beef. It means I have options I've never had before. I could practically hear the gears turning in Melvin's head. Dad, this is incredible news. Why didn't you tell me sooner? When would I have told you? During one of your 2-minute check-in calls? That's not fair, isn't it? Melvin, when I called you about needing expensive medication, what did you say? Dad, we've been over this. Humor me. A sigh. I said I couldn't help financially. You said it was my problem to figure out. You said you were saving money for a vacation. I was trying to be practical. Were you? Or were you just not willing to sacrifice anything for your father? Dad, I don't understand why you're bringing this up now. Because I need you to understand something, son. That phone call was a test. A test? I lied about being sick. I wanted to see which of my children would be willing to help their father in a medical crisis. The silence this time was different, heavier. You lied about being sick? Yes. To test me, to test all of you. Dad, he struggled for words. That's manipulative. Is it, or is it honest? For once in my life, I wanted to know who really cared about me and who just saw me as an obligation. Of course I care about you. Do you? When was the last time you called just to hear my voice? When was the last time you visited without it being a holiday? Melvin didn't answer. Your son Tyler drove 800 miles with his last $200 because he thought I needed help. 800 miles, Melvin. He was willing to postpone college to take care of me. Tyler's just a kid. He doesn't understand. He understands family better than you do. The words hung in the air between us. Truth sometimes cuts deeper than any insult. Dad, I think we should talk about this in person. I could drive down this weekend. Could you? What about your golf lessons? What about saving money for vacation? Dad, that's not fair. Life isn't fair, Melvin. I learned that a long time ago. But I also learned something else recently. I don't have to accept unfair treatment anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I have options now. It means I can choose who I want in my life and who I don't. Are you threatening to cut me off? The question revealed everything about how Melvin saw our relationship. Not as love, not as family, but as something he could be cut off from. Like a financial arrangement. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply stating facts. I spent 63 years accepting whatever scraps of attention my family was willing to give me. Those days are over. Dad, you're being unreasonable. Am I? Let me ask you something, son. What do you want from me? What do you mean? I mean, now that you know I have money, what do you want from me? Another long pause. When Melvin spoke again, his voice was more careful. I want us to have a good relationship. Now you do. Funny how that works. Dad, that's not why, isn't it? You didn't want a relationship with poor Stephen. You barely tolerated him. But rich Stephen, he's suddenly worth your time. That's not true. Then prove it. How? Show me that you care about me, not my money. Show me that I matter to you as a person, not as a potential inheritance. Dad, how am I supposed to prove that? The same way Tyler proved it, by putting me first sometimes, by making sacrifices, by showing up when it's inconvenient. My phone beeped with another call. Linda's name appeared on the screen. Melvin, your sister is calling. I assume she's heard the news by now. Dad, don't hang up. We need to finish this conversation. Actually, we don't. Everything I needed to say, I've said. Everything I needed to know, I learned from that phone call about my medication. Dad, please. Goodbye, Melvin. I switched to Linda's call. Daddy? Oh my God. Melvin just called me. Is it true about the inheritance? Daddy. She hadn't called me Daddy in 20 years. Yes, it's true. This is incredible. How much money are we talking about? We, not you. We. Enough. Daddy, I think we should all get together and talk about this. You know, make sure you're protected from people who might try to take advantage of you. People who might try to take advantage of me. The irony was staggering. Linda